First of all, I thank the organizers for inviting me to take part in this conference and to participate in the discussion of today, which was very important. About 15 years ago, I was one of the first civilians. I'm talking about 1992, so about 20 years ago. I was one of the first civilians to enter the Ministry of Defense in the sociological center of the Ministry of Defense. Back then, my colleagues used to joke with me. And back then I took it as a joke because I was not so sensitive. I did not have the feeling that I was being discriminated against, a feeling which now I unfortunately have. They used to tell me, here we have a civilian chick, a woman, because actually I had a leading position in the Ministry of Defense. So they gave me, here we have a woman who is also manager of us. I'm very happy that many of the leading positions in the Ministry of Defense are occupied by women and that there are no jokes against them. So, as Mr. Volchev said, the responsibility of protecting women in conflict and post-conflict stages is a rather complex issue. However, we have a good idea about what we need to talk about. I would like to focus on several points. The first one being what is the influence of conflict situations on women. This issue was touched upon by previous speakers, particularly by the last ones. Mr. Volchev made a good introduction into the issue, but I would like to focus on the most serious issue when we speak about an armed conflict in a particular area. First of all, however, one of the most serious issues is the loss of status. What do I mean by the loss of status? It is a two-way process. The previous speaker spoke of one type of losing one's status. You have lived in a patriarchal society or in a society with a specific set of values and norms. You respect certain traditions, and all of a sudden new people arrive, new events occur, and your inner world is destroyed. So you like certain things, you don't like others, but you need to accept them. You need to work with different kind of people, and you need to change your existence. The other type of losing one's status is when infrastructure, production, and economy are destroyed. Then women who in the past used to have higher status, used to work, lose their jobs and lose their statuses. My second point is related to the fact that during conflicts, women who worldwide are perceived as the family caretakers, regardless of legislation for shared responsibility for family care, for legislation on parental leave, not just mother leave on maternity, but also on paternity. But traditionally, women are seen as the family caretakers. And in a situation of an armed conflict, the care for the family and for the prosperity of those that women take care of becomes very difficult. It is either very difficult or rather even sometimes impossible. Speaking of sexual violence as a means of threat and humiliation during armed conflicts, We said many things on this topic. I will not dwell upon it too much. I tend to agree with what you said and with what the previous speakers said. This is indeed one of the most serious issues that go hand in hand with every armed conflict. And many of the UN resolutions that we are discussing today incriminate this act and treat it as crime. This is already some progress, some basis upon which we can build upon our efforts to overcome this problem. Now, protecting women against sexual violence, which is sometimes used as a means of waging war, results of this are risks of infertility, STDs, depression that sometimes leads to suicides. In certain societies, depending on cultural norms, where abortion is not allowed, the suicide actually is a murder of an unborn child. And there is also a serious issue of being rejected by the family and closed ones. Another issue that I would like to focus on is that during armed conflicts, large groups of women become victims of human trafficking. They are sexually exploited, their work is exploited, and even sometimes their body organs are stolen forcefully. A widespread phenomenon that women in conflict situations are much more vulnerable than other types of women to organ trafficking. Because, as we mentioned, human trafficking happens with the agreement of people who are in such a situation that they cannot meet their basic needs. They need food. They hope that if they move on to another place, they will have better living conditions. What are the possible solutions to reducing the negative impact on women of all these phenomena? One possible solution that we discussed a lot is to include a larger number of women in peacekeeping missions, women who would go in conflict points and work with other women. Another possible solution is that when we have a military or a peacekeeping mission, we should exert more effort to involve women from the local community. They will be involved in mediation processes and in peace building processes. Everything that we are talking of today, and the previous speakers said in more detail that there are such possibilities and efforts taken in that regard. However, one of the issues that I would like to elaborate on, and I think it is a very important one, the fact that there is international legislation in the field is a progress, and whenever there is an international mission in a particular area, effort is taken to adopt national legislation in conformity with the international legislation, so that the protection of women is provided for by the national law. Also, action is taken to improve the representation of women in leading positions so that they can participate in the decision-making process. From my own experience from the years when I have dealt with human rights and women's rights, I can say that legislation is but the beginning of the equality process, of the process of overcoming all obstacles to the good development of women. First of all, because we need to raise the sensitivity of women. Women themselves should claim changes and take active participation for them, because low sensitivity regarding discrimination issues, specifically issues of violence against women, leads to the fact that many women do not realize do not see violence where it is. They take it for granted. They think, my grandmother used to be subjected to this, my mother used to be subjected to this. This is then a normal thing. My daughter will be subjected to this as well. Speaking of Bulgaria, I can say that some years ago I thought that there was no domestic violence. And as I have worked a lot on this issue in recent years, I can say that large groups of society are not sensitized to this issue. Women are not sensitive to this issue. They never submit complaints. They never seek judicial protection. So a key issue in this situation is working with the women themselves in order to improve their sensitivity, their awareness to the issue, so that they can be empowered by themselves, so that they can find their internal resources to deal with this issue. But when speaking of cultural norms and of lifestyles passed on through generations, as we heard, for example, for Afghanistan from the previous panel, that we are only starting the democratization of life in this country, then we need to work with the families and work with the community locally. Because in order to accept new norms, in order to adopt a new lifestyle, the woman is in a situation both to it is put in a situation where she doesn't have a lot of choice, and she needs to benefit from a lot of support in order to do what she wants to do. So the main task that we need to accomplish in order to protect women in the conflict and post-conflict stages is to take actions to empower women and young girls. As was already said, this can be achieved through education, through healthcare education on issues of reproductive health, in order to create the feeling of control of one's own body. Also, this can be a preventive measure for STDs. Financial incentives need to be provided for as well. I keep thinking that financial independence, together with education policies and raise awareness campaigns, can be one of the most successful means to find the local resources to deal with the issue. Of course, we need to build up leadership skills as well. This can be achieved in the process of active involvement in various social and labor processes. I thank you for your attention.